good afternoon, everyone. I think difficulties that Mrs. Chin just pointed out are actually the challenges that I wanted to tell you about. For me, practical challenges are mainly linked to contact and communication. First, communication with the public we work with, meaning convicted people. And second, communication with different partners of the judiciary institution. Third, communication to the public opinion, like the civil society, as sentences, execution procedures and laws are very technical and sometimes really hard to understand. And there are lots of myths surrounding that matter that we as judges make sure to demystify. We also make sure to explain those technicalities every step of the way when given the occasion. And in the first place, to convict themselves, and that sure can be challenging, but also to the different partners of the judiciary institution that are not always familiar with the legal system. The first challenge would be to create a level of trust with the convicted people and keep in touch with them to accompany them towards rehabilitation and away from the criminal sphere. But it can be very challenging because we have to deal with people who might come, and that's probably the majority of them, from very difficult social background. For instance, we work with people who are not lucky enough to have a material stability, don't have stable home addresses, change phone numbers very frequently, and furthermore, don't really use and do the internet, so don't communicate via emails. We also have to work every now and then with foreigners who don't master the French language, making it difficult to create a relationship, even though we can get the help of translators. And those social difficulties can sometimes be very challenging. As I said earlier, the main goal of early releases and judicial supervision is to help and accompany convicted people towards rehabilitation. And to achieve that, you need to be able to keep in touch, which can be tricky. Indeed, while under supervision, convicted people often have to deal with oppressive conditions, including paying fines and fees many cannot afford, attending frequent meetings, often far away from home or during work hours if they're lucky enough to work, reporting every address changes, and that can be a lot when they lack housing stability. And all those accessory difficulties, if I may call it like this, can easily get in the way of fluid communication. The second challenge would be to communicate well with partners. And in France, execution judges have developed a strong relationship with the probation services, and that has become even more fluid and easier with the implementation of a software that contains the names of every single person who's either in jail or invested in a non-custodial measure. Through that application, we can exchange through notes and reports about all our shared situations, and it's actually pretty easy and efficient. But communication with the other partners, and there are lots of them, is not always as easy, especially for the probation services who have to develop and coordinate a network of community-based partners in order to provide the convicted people with all the opportunities for social reintegration. That can mean access to social benefits, healthcare, or education. And those services also have to deal with public partners. These include decentralized services, general councils, towns, or social agencies. And on that specific note, you have to know that the French lawmakers are very keen on emphasizing community service sentences. And in a very recent reform, a governmental agency called Community Service 360 has been created. It aims at listing all the available workplaces that agree to host convicts and offer them a community service job. It also allows probation officers to look for new partnerships easily. And finally, probation services have to build more and more relationships with private partners who are most of the time totally unaware of the judicial system. Therefore, it is crucial to exchange about the theory underlying the national legal system to ensure a better understanding of alternative sanctions. And to facilitate such mutual understandings, it could be actually interesting to draft national fact sheets and manuals introducing that subjects to private partners. And more globally, more generally, this pedagogical effort should be done towards the civil society. This is why it is important to communicate and make clear to everyone that sentences do include the possibility of early release, or that sentencing doesn't automatically equals prison. And I consider it's essential to explain the benefits of those non-custodial measures that aim at accompanying convicted people away from the criminal background. And where I work in Rouen, it is pretty usual for us to go to high schools or middle schools and explain the judicial system. And we usually try to introduce the matter with a movie and then debate. We also make sure to explain all of this to the grand jury when sitting in criminal courts. It actually feels very satisfying to leave those courts knowing that citizens who actually didn't have any clue of the system before being picked up go back home with knowledge that prison isn't always the best option, and at least on a long-term vision that the social accompaniment is essential. Thank you for your attention.